This is Sunday Edition with Doug Wright.
Good morning and welcome to the program. Thank you for being with us today. We have a lot to cover on the program, and later on we're going to talk a little bit more about Governor Spencer Cox of Utah joining other Republican governors around the country in announcing an end date for some of the federal unemployment COVID benefits, saying that it is a detriment to those who are employers in the state of Utah.
Biggest problem we have right now in the state of Utah are finding workers for the jobs that are available. And as we talk to workers, we found that it actually is a disincentive.
Keeping them back in the workforce and making it perhaps more difficult to get back in the workforce was a motivating factor for Governor Cox and others, but there are other points of view on that, and we'll explore those a little later on in the program. Something happened this week within the Republican Party that was rather jarring, even for stalwarts within the party, and that was the fact that Representative Liz Cheney, by a voice vote, by the way, so nobody's officially on the record for a yay or nay, was ousted from her leadership position.
I think that it is an indication of where the Republican Party is, and I think that the party is in a place that we've got to bring it back from, and we've got to get back to a position where we are a party that can fight for conservative principles, that can fight for substance. We cannot be dragged backward by the very dangerous lies of a former president.
In the aftermath of all of this, Evan McMullin, who of course ran for the presidency 4 years ago, decided to do something about it. And we are very pleased to have Evan joining us on Sunday Edition. Thank you for being here. And, you know, I just happened to be sitting by this book, and it's by John Meacham, and it's The Soul of America. And let me just ask you the straight up question, and this regarding the Republican Party in particular. Is there a battle underway right now for the soul of the Republican Party?
I think there is, Doug, but I think it goes even deeper than that. I think there's a battle for the soul of the country. And we've forgotten, what unites us. We've forgotten what makes America strong, which at its core, I think, are some of the things that we talk about in this call for American renewal, which is what we issued, what you put on the screen just a moment ago. And it's an alternative. It's a new vision for leadership in the country, leadership for the Republican Party, but as I say, even more broadly for the country. And it's based on principles that I and that over 150 other Republican leaders from around the country, governors, former members of Congress, former national security officials, leaders from around the country say that, we agree that these are the most critical ideas and principles that will move our country forward, that have the capacity to help us overcome challenges, and that have the ability to remind us who we are, America, unite us. And so that's what we're doing about it. We think that, the country is it faces some real challenges. Of course, we saw that on January 6th when there was a violent insurrection at the Capitol meant to overturn the results of an election. We see, obviously, what happened this week with Congresswoman Cheney. And there's a lot of division within the Republican Party and outside of it between the two parties and just in general. But we think this statement, a call for American renewal, and the principles that it contains are enormously powerful tools to get us past this, to change the discussion, remind us what brings us together, what unites us, and help us solve any challenges that we face.
The call for American renewal, I've noticed in some of the coverage, including in the Deseret News and elsewhere, all kinds of terms. Manifesto has been used, a clarion call to bring the Republican Party back from the edge. I've seen all kinds of things associated with it. Even it's the first draft of a new party platform. Do you embrace any of those thoughts of where these ideals and where this call might go?
It's a good question, Doug. And, I wouldn't say that we know exactly. But what we do know is that our politics shouldn't be personality driven. It should be driven by ideas and by these core ideas, these principles that we talk about. And we've got to start there. And wherever that takes us, fine. But as long as we're guided by those principles, then we're going to be well served. Our country will be well served. We'll live better lives. And so I'm not sure. Certainly, we would love for the vision we've laid out to animate the Republican Party and to take it in a consistent direction. But we would love for that to be true for the whole country, not just for the Republican Party. So we'll see. I mean, we didn't use the word manifesto exactly. It's a statement to us. But we hope that it will animate Republicans and Americans of other party affiliations to unite and to work together more than working to divide each other and working against each other.
As I looked this document over, it really resonated in a lot of places. And I like this. I don't know if this is the preamble to it or what, before it gets specific on different topics. But when in our democratic republic forces of conspiracy, division, and despotism arise, it is the patriotic duty of citizens to act collectively in defense of liberty and justice. It was so interesting to me, and perhaps the thing that resonated more than anything. I mean, we talk about ethical government, civic responsibility, opportunity, constitutional order, the rule of law, but truth. I read that we recognize truth and reason as essential to a free and just society. Then it goes on. We oppose the employment of fear-mongering, conspiracism, and falsehoods. And I have never seen anything like it. We were chatting just prior to going on the air. I've observed politics now for a long, long time. I've never seen anything like this, where many of the people that are toe-to-toe, nose-to-nose arguing over something, they can't even take 4 or 5 steps back and be able to stand on a common bond of at least one truthful thing. When we are living in the world of alternative facts and where truth seems to just be thrown out the window, that scares me, I think, more than anything that is going on in our country today.
I couldn't agree more with you, Doug. You know, I was in a meeting with a Marine Corps 4-star general about a year ago, and someone asked him what he thought the biggest threat to America was. And his answer surprised me. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know, he's right. And his answer was, our lack of grounding in truth, our lack of commitment to truth as a country right now is putting us at greater risk than anything else. And you think about it, it's so true. How do we solve problems when we're not committed to truth and facts collectively? You know, we can't find common ground. We can't come up with good solutions to problems. We can't hold our government accountable. None of those things can we do without truth. We can't defend ourselves against threats, foreign and domestic. We need truth for all of those things. And so we've got to get back to that now. And there are many things that feed into that. Our media environment, I think, is very divisible away from objective truth often. But, you know, we've got to recommit ourselves as citizens to seeking truth and to promoting it. And then we've also got to demand that our leaders do the same. They've got to seek and promote truth. And then we also talk about reason. It's so important that reason associate or accompany truth. That we expect our leaders to govern with reason and with truth, and we expect each other to do the same in our self-governance.
Evan, we could talk for the whole program and many programs to follow. I wish we had more time, but I can't tell you how often, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, that I've thought about the famous quote. It's actually etched into the mantelpiece of the White House, where John Adams, and it came from a letter that he wrote to Abigail, but he called down heaven's blessings upon the house itself. But then he said, "May none but honest and wise men ever rule under this roof, pardon me." And I've thought about that so often. And And I can't help but wonder, what would John Adams think about some of the things that have gone on under that roof? But from both parties, by the way. We happen to be focusing on the Republican Party today. Maybe just a quick thought on that from you. You felt so strongly about it 5 years ago that you chose to run for the presidency and give people an option other than Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, look, I think we do have good leaders in this country, and we're blessed with good leaders in Utah. I'll say that we all have a responsibility to ensure in our system of self-government that our leaders are wise and honorable, and we have a system that allows us to choose who they are and to hold them accountable. But I think that we've sort of fallen too often into our partisan tribes, in which we prioritize the interest of our tribe above that of our country. And George Washington, in his farewell address, warned against the spirit of parties or tribalism or partisanship. I forget exactly how he put it, but we're certainly in a day and age now where we too often prioritize the interests of our party above the interests of the country. It would sort of be like if we were on the same baseball team and we prioritize the interest of our team above the interest of the game, for example, by cheating or by trying to in some way erode the integrity of a game we were playing. That doesn't serve anyone's interest in the long term. And I think we find ourselves in a situation where many of us are so partisan, we've become so partisan that we're willing to sacrifice the game or our self-governance, our constitutional order, in order to benefit our side. And we can't go down that road. Whether we like it or not, we share this country, we share a future, and we have to find a way to work together. And the way to do that, I think, is by finding common ground through these principles, like the kind we include in a call for American renewal. And then, yes, having some differences, but finding a way forward based on truth, based on our founding ideals that we're all inherently free and equal under the law, and working together to solve problems. I think there's enormous power in these principles. I encourage everyone to just read them. Read A Call for Renewal. You can find it online at acallforrenewal.com, and join us.
Evan, thank you so much for being on Sunday Edition. We'll look for other opportunities to chat, and we'll take a brief break. We'll be right back on Sunday Edition. Some changing demographics among Latter-day Saint voters. How dramatic is the change, and this was the headline in the Deseret News on an op-ed piece by Christian Sager, are LDS voters turning blue? Christian, welcome to the program. And are LDS voters turning blue?
It's an excellent question, Doug. And I think the best way to jump into this is just to explore what's not happening. What's not happening is some of the country's most reliable Republicans suddenly defecting to the Democratic Party en masse. But what is happening is a lot of activity and movement at the granular level that was spurred by 2016 and has continued into 2020. And that does suggest that there may be some weakening party loyalties such that we haven't seen quite before.
Are we mostly seeing it with the younger voters? Younger, say, for example, Republicans, red, who are more willing perhaps than their elders to basically go blue?
Yeah, the 18 to 39-year-old Latter-day Saint voting bloc actually gave a plurality win to President Biden. I think it was 47% of them went for President Biden, which is far above what the older generation did among Biden voters. And that it's very interesting, but also at the same time, it just tracks national trends. The younger generation, this up-and-coming generation of voters, have proven themselves to be among the most open-minded, politically speaking, among the least dogmatic, politically speaking. And Latter-day Saint voters are no exception. So this younger generation certainly does appear to be not as loyal to the GOP as some of the other elder Latter-day Saint voters have been.
Mm-hmm. There was an article in the last major election cycle from the publication The Hill that actually had the headline, why are states like Utah turning blue? And it was interesting because the speculation was at that point that there was a real difficulty for many people, Latter-day Saints in this case, to vote for Donald Trump. But the statistics show that, it was kind of 50-50 at first, but after a while, not only did the LDS voters say they approved of Donald Trump, they were actually warming to him, where it went up considerably. And that was surprising to The Hill, which, of course, is a national political publication. Are you seeing any trends in that direction, particularly among the party loyals, or are they now more or less likely to consider or lean red?
It is absolutely true that Latter-day Saints warmed up to President Trump over time. I think he entered with about a 50% approval rating, and that shot up 12 points within a year. And I want to underscore something that if you talk to political scientists, they will absolutely tell you that partisan loyalty does not erode overnight. It's an enduring attachment. And if it does change, it usually takes quite a bit of both time and some sort of momentous occasion to really flip from GOP to Democrat and vice versa. And so I think that bears fruit in the approval rating of President Trump over time. And I think one of the very instructive explanations of all of this is just to look down the ballot. Even if Latter-day Saints were voting for President Biden, there's a very good chance that they were still voting for Republicans for their state offices. And so you can make a case, again, at the granular level, there is some movement and some shifting across into the Democratic Party. But by and large, the past two election cycles have just been a tale about two very interesting presidential candidates that have been pretty divisive among a lot of folks, Latter-day Saints included. And it'll just be interesting to watch what kind of candidates the parties put forward in the future.
It will be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens, not only in the next major election, but also in the off-year races as well. Christian, thank you so much for joining us today on Sunday Edition. And when we come back, we talked about Governor Cox ending some COVID benefits in fear that there is a disincentive for some to get back to work. Well, there are some other thoughts on that that we'll explore next, coming up on Sunday Edition. As I mentioned right at the very beginning of the program, this week, Governor Spencer Cox joined other Republican governors, some others, around the country, announcing the end of additional COVID-19 unemployment benefits, fearing that it was a disincentive for some to actually go back into the workplace where workers are desperately needed right now. There are some other thoughts on that, and we're very pleased to have Bill Tibbetts, who is the Associate Director of the Crossroads Urban Center, joining us right now. Bill, thank you for being on the program. And, I've heard some of the same anecdotal stuff, and I've heard it even from people that are relatively close, and they go, good grief, as long as I've got this extra money, I'm actually making more money by staying home, by not going back to the traditional work that I was involved in, and especially if daycare was involved. Your thoughts on this? I always hate to just base my opinions on something I heard from a neighbor or a member of my extended family. What are your thoughts?
I think there was a report that came out last week saying that when you look at who's returned to work following the pandemic, the unemployment rate for low-wage workers is still 30%. And so the people who work low-wage jobs, which a lot of the sectors of the economy that were hit the hardest by the pandemic, are sectors that pay low wages. And so I think there are a lot of people who the unemployment rate in those sectors is really high. And so you can't, when you say people should return to work, I mean, if all of your experience is in the hospitality industry, it doesn't matter that they're hiring like gangbusters in the tech sector. And so there's a disconnect between the jobs that are available and the work experience of the people who are currently receiving unemployment benefits.
I seem to recall that you brought up the fact that 30% of the individuals you're talking about in these particular industries, it's a 30% unemployment rate still, is that correct?
Yeah, as of last week, nationwide, 30% of low-wage workers, people at the bottom of the income scale, are still unemployed. And so the people who have returned to work have disproportionately been people in higher-paying jobs. And that's, and so I think and a lot of those people are working in sectors that are still not hiring. And so I think it's really important if people are going to have to, I think one thing we've done really well in Utah is we have invested in new resources and job training, but those new job training opportunities are not going to be available until after the extended unemployment benefits expire. And so I think if we're expecting people to shift from working in hospitality to working in the tech sector, we need to make sure that those training options are available before we tell people, hey, good luck finding a job. Your benefits are over.
In the limited time that we have, let me ask you an important question. What are your concerns now that Governor Cox and other governors around the country have announced that these additional benefits will end? What are your fears, especially for this vulnerable part of our society?
I think, there are people who this money is how they pay the rent. This money is how they buy food. This money is how they pay for all of their basic necessities. And so if we cancel the benefits before the types of work they're qualified to do exist or job training options that are available, we're basically, saying, hey, you should do your best to scrape by what you can from charities like our food pantry or our thrift store, which is not going to be. We're not. There's not an adequate response. We're worried people are going to be left. We're going to see more evictions. We're going to see more people, coming to us for help with food.
Bill, we certainly appreciate your thoughts and thank you for joining us on Sunday Edition. That does it for our program today, and we have music in the spoken word, which is coming up next.